Yes. Good morning, students. So today in this session we are going to study about nationalism. Nationalism in India is the most important chapter for our history study, history part studying social science, and even for we Indians also it's most important. In the previous session already a chapter you have studied, students, that is the one of the important chapter, rise of nationalism in Europe. In Europe, the nationalism, the sparks of nationalism was spread entire European continent, and even it went on the other continents also, and it's reached to India also. So after that, studying the first chapter, we are coming to this in the second chapter to this nationalism in India. So students, here this is a modern nationalism. How this modern, what is mean by modern nationalism? The modern nationalism in Europe came to be associated with the formation of nation state. This is the important, my dear students. What is mean by nation states? Nation states will be having four important qualities. The first and foremost important quality is it's a government which is having a common government ruled by the same native peoples, their own government, native peoples. Their own government will be there, rule of government, and then people representatives will be ruling it, this one. And then second one is they are having a defined boundaries, fixed boundaries, territory, fixed boundary territory. This is the second most important the feature of this modern state. And third one, that is the most important, is the sovereign power. The nation will be having sovereignty power. That's the most important one, sovereignty power, third one. And the fourth one is, most important one is that is a common interested people. Common interested people. All four together we call it as a nation states, my dear students. And it's also meant this nation state was emerged in most of the European countries, and its spark was already spread all over the world also. Almost this now the nation states also changed the people's understanding. People understanding what they understood. People are understood. Nation means what? So nation, people are changing. Thinking of people are also changed this modern nation states, my dear students. First, the people have started thinking who they were in the past. Thinking about past, whether they were very rich, with prosperity they had prosperity, they were rich also in this case. And then now what happened? And they are at present, present they are ruled by colonial ruler and despotic rule of the colonial rulers, and the great exploitation, injustice they are suffering in this present. This understanding the people understood from this one thing. And the next one, what defined their identity? Their identities were defined. So their specific, unique identities, their specialities were identified, and they started feeling they were great themselves. And then next, third one is developed the sense of belongingness. Belongingness means our people, our nation, our territory, and these are the belonging, sense of belongingness which was developed, my dear students. That's another one most important things of this modern nation state. So that was one important one. Now let us see the modern nationalism developed lot many other things. Modern nationalism developed. The first developed modern nationalism thing is the new symbols were found. New symbols were made. New symbols, the national flag and the national emblem, national this one, all the in the name of nation it has been developed. National icons were developed. Different national icons were developed to developing this united consciousness and all. And new song, especially patriotic song in the name of nation and all, it has been developed. New ideas were forged, new links among the people, and then redefined the boundaries of communities. Boundaries of communities. There was a lot of division in the communities on the basis of caste, religion, region. All the boundaries were removed and redefined the boundaries of communities. In the most of the countries, the making of this new national identity was a long process. See, developing the national identity, it is not a short span process, my dear students. It was a very long span process. It was a long span process, and it took more than 10, 20 years, and in case of India, it took around about more than nearly 75 years, my dear students. Now, how did this national consciousness emerged in India? So, these are the ideas about this nationalism and the nation states. Now, how this national consciousness was emerged in India? That is another one, the important area, my dear students. And now you see, how did the national consciousness emerged in India? This is what next. So that's what national consciousness emerged through the feeling of anti-colonial movement. Through the feeling of anti-colonial movement. This is the most important one. All they are not happy with the British rule. British were exploited all our resource, people, and all, and politically, economically, and socially. And second one, through the process of united struggle against their rule. When exploited people started uniting to struggle against the exploiter, ruler, Britishers and all. It was the main thing, my dear friends. And the third one is by feeling oneness, by feeling the sense of oppressed and exploited. Just now the people are feeling they are oppressed, they are exploited. The feeling of oppression and exploited also, it was united the peoples of India. So in this way, different groups, different classes of India, different regional peoples were united and had their own notion of freedom and their own notion, their own thinking. And whatever the different thinking, different notions were there, but one common thing was that the freedom of India. All the peoples were united to move, to struggle, to fight against the British rule to get the freedom to India. And then in such a movement, situation, Indian National Congress, INC, Indian National Congress, it was organized all the peoples systematically and removed all the differences, different opinions, different community, caste, religious peoples and all. They removed all those this one and organized the Indian National Congress, this movement. And then the leader, most dynamic leader, Mahatma Gandhi, under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, tried to forge the groups together, try to force the groups together within one movement, But unity did not emerge without conflict. Dear students, you keep in the mind, there was a strong unity, definitely it was built, but it was not so easy. There was much conflict, contradictories were there, different opinions were there. So in spite of all the difficulties, conflicts and all, unity was achieved. In the early textbook, students, in the previous textbook and previous classes, we have studied the same Indian national movement, the Indian national movement in 3 phases. The first phase was a moderate phase, this 1885 to 2006, this one, 1906, 1885 to 1906, first phase. There's a moderate phase, then extremist phase, and then third phase was a Gandhian era. It was called a Gandhian era. Mahatma Gandhi is going to take the leadership of this one. And then you have read about growth of nationalism in India up to the first decades of 1920. After 1920, so this one, Mahatma Gandhi is going to take the leadership of Indian National Congress and for this freedom movement. And then in this chapter, this is what we are having in this chapter. What are the ideas and informations we are going to study? In this chapter, so we will pick up the story from 1920. We are going to pick up story from 1920. And this lesson, we mainly studying about this non-cooperation movement and the civil disobedience movement of Mahatma Gandhi ji. This is one important area, most important area we are going to study, my dear students. And then second one is, here we will explore how the INC shouted to develop the national movement, how the organized Indian National Congress organized the national movement. This part also we are going to study this one. And then how the different social groups participated in the national movement. Different social groups were participated in this movement, and there may be the peasants, there may be the workers, there may be the businessmen, the people from city, people from rural area, tribal people, and then all the peoples were laborers. They took different peoples, how they took part in this freedom movement. These are the information we are going to study in this lesson, my dear students. And the First World War, 1914 to 1918. So dear students, you are I think, so you might be knowing it. The First World War was fought between the two military groups, that is Allies power and Axis power. Allies power, there's a group, the four major countries were there. It was Great Britain, France, America and Russia. This was Allies power. And then another group was the military group, that is Axis power. Axis power, Germany, Italy and Japan. These three were another military group, they called Axis power. Between the Axis power and the Allies power, the First World War was fought. And fought for what? Fought for capturing the colonies, either capture the colonies or snatch the colonies, and to protect the colonies only, for colony purpose only. By this First World War was fought. And then in this First World War, students, here India was also took part. India was also took part in this First World War, and during this time India was a British colony. India was a British colony. The British was fighting the war in favor of Allies power. The Allies power, it was fought in favor of Allies power, and automatically India supported, and whether India supported or not secondary, but British took India into the First World War. British took India into the First World War, and First World War was greatly impacted, influenced economically and socially. A worst impact was made on India also, and it was affected. Now let us see, students, in this one, in this content, the World War created a new economic and political situation in India. New World War created, the World War created new economic and political situation in India. That's the first one. There is a huge increase in defense expenditure. War means expenditure. It's a huge expenditure for arms and ammunition and all. It is required, my dear students. To meet this expenditure, British were taken loan from Indians as a war loan from Indians. Indian people, they taken war loan, increasing the tax. Different tax were they increased. Custom duties were also raised, and new types of tax, that is the income tax, was introduced by the British. That was economically exploited India. This is one. And the next second one is, through the war, the prices increased double between 1913 to 1918. It's leading extreme hardship for the common people. So prices were doubled, but income was fixed only. And because of that one, the common man is not able to purchase lot many basic required things for the surviving, for living this one. So he was pushed in the hardship. And then that's the next one is a third important impact was forced recruitment in a rural area in British Army. British Army. So that was the main important thing, my dear friends. British Army needed more and more soldiers and all to collect the soldiers and all. To recruit the soldiers, they went to the rural area and forced the rural peoples to send their wards, send their people to this war and all. And it was, even though rural people was not ready to go to the war, by force they were taken. It will lead to the widespread of anger against the British rule. And the next, the failure of crop. The crops were failed in many parts of India. In 1918 to 1919, resulted a shortage of food grains, acute shortage of food grains. It was caused to the acute shortage of food grains, and the price rise also double. And this was another one great impact of First World War on Indian economy and society, my dear students. And spread of influenza epidemics. By this time only, the fourth important impact is spread of influenza, this is epidemic disease. It caused many deaths. According to the 1921 census, 12 to 13 million people perished as a result of famine and epidemics. So this way, the these are all the hardships and difficulties and problems will go away after the World War, First World War. When World War completes and all the difficulties will go away, like that common peoples were believed. Peoples believed their hardship would end after the war, but it was not happen. It was not happen. And then at this stage, new leader, new mode of struggle, it was suggested by this time. So new leaders were came, the Mahatma Gandhiji, and then new mode of struggle, that is started by this Mahatma Gandhiji, and we are going to study in this chapter. Okay, students. The idea of Satyagraha. What is the meaning of Satyagraha? How the Satyagraha has to be practiced? And then these informations we are going to study in this area, my dear students. So now the Gandhiji returned to India in January 1915 from South Africa. Gandhiji went to South Africa for his professional purpose, and to professional purpose he had gone there. But where he could see the one of important, there's a wrong practice. It's a bad practice, apartheid. Apartheid practice was there. And then the majorities were local peoples were there, and minorities are white peoples. They are from European countries, the European white peoples. They are ruling. They are minorities ruling to the majority of local people. This is called a racist regime. Racist regime. Making the discrimination between white skin color people and black skin color people. It's called racist regime. And then we call it also apartheid also. There is against to this bad practice. The practice, Mahatma Gandhiji started a novel method of agitation. The movement against to this bad practice is called Satyagraha, apartheid Satyagraha. This is a racist Satyagraha he started, Mahatma Gandhiji in Africa. And here he got succeeded to giving some extent justice to the local peoples of South Africa. And then from here, Gandhiji came to India in 1915. He came to India in 1915. The idea of Satyagraha. What is the idea of Satyagraha? Idea of Satyagraha emphasize the power of, this is the power of truth. This is power of truth and need to search for truth. So truth only, because of not knowing the truth only, oppressor, exploitation is happening, oppression is happening, injustice is happening because of not knowing the truth. If we know the truth, definitely he will not do any injustice and he will not do the oppression and all. That was the main thing, my dear students. And then the power of truth and the need to search of truth. It's a search. This truth should be searched and convinced to the oppressor. And if we convince to the oppressor will realize, and the problem will be solved. It suggested that if the causes was a true struggle, and then against the injustice, then physical force is not necessary to fight with the oppressor. Physical force is not needed. Here only the force, the peace and non-violence, only two instruments to fight in this Satyagraha. Peace and non-violence should be maintained. And then it was not necessary to fight with oppressor, with physical force. Without seeking vengeance or being aggressive, a Satyagrahi could win the battle through the non-violence. So through this battle of non-violence we can this one. So the oppressor has to be convinced the truth, and then he has to be convinced the truth, and he is realizing the truth only, he will change his mind, change his heart, and he will stop doing the injustice and all. That's what this work should be done with peace and non-violence. This is called a Satyagraha, my dear students. This could be done by appealing to the conscience of the oppressor. Then it could be done by appealing. It could be done by appealing to the conscience of the oppressor. And then the peoples, including the oppressor, had to be persuaded to see the truth. And instead of being a force to accept the truth through the use of violence, we can do it through the peace and the non-violence only. So this is, by this struggle, the truth was bound to be ultimate triumph. At last, Satyameva Jayate, that's ultimate triumph. It comes to the truth only will win. And then so Gandhiji believed that dharma of non-violence would be unite all the Indian peoples. Yes, Gandhiji Dharma is non-violence. This non-violence will unite all the Indian people, not any other religions, my dear friends. So with this idea, Gandhiji started 3 important Satyagraha movements successfully, and he was succeeded also in the 3 Satyagraha movements. That's the Satyagraha movement of Gandhiji in India. After arriving in India, Gandhiji successfully organized the Satyagraha movement in various places. The first important place was in Champaran. The first one in 1916, Champaran Satyagraha, Champaran district of Bihar. Here, peasants used to grow indigo crop, and then the British officials and British peoples were forced the peasants to grow the indigo crop, and as well as they used to give very less price for this crop and all. So it was a great injustice was done with the peasants of Champaran. Gandhiji took leadership, Mahatma Gandhiji took leadership, and then he started the Champaran Satyagraha, and he was succeeded to get the justice favor of the Champaran peasants. That was the first Champaran Satyagraha, it's known as Champaran Satyagraha. It was done in 1916. And 1917, Kheda, it is in Gujarat district. The peasants movement. Here, peasants were in great trouble. Peasants were in great trouble because 2 important reasons were there. Their crops were failed because of famine, not getting the proper rainfall and all. Crops were failed, and they are unable to survive their life. And another side is plague epidemic was spreading in the Kheda district. Because of these 2 great problems, the peasants of Kheda district are unable to pay the land revenue to the British, and their demand was that the demanded revenue collection be relaxed. It's given up, given up or waived. That was the demand, and Gandhiji took leadership of this Kheda peasants, and he was also succeeded in this Kheda Satyagraha of Gujarat in 1917. And third most important was in 1918, Ahmedabad Cotton Textile Mill Worker Satyagraha was organized. Here cotton textile mill worker where wage was paid very less, and they were supposed to work long hours, more than 12 hours, and then their basic amenities was not there properly. In this case, Gandhiji took the leadership of Ahmedabad cotton textile workers, laborers leadership, and he did Satyagraha here. In this Satyagraha, Gandhiji was also succeeded in providing justice to the peasants of this Kheda, this Ahmedabad workers. And then in this way, so this is the third important victory of Gandhiji to get this one. And this is one of the most important success of Mahatma Gandhiji's Satyagraha movement. So Rowlatt Act, the another important one act was passed by British in India. That's a Rowlatt Act. What is actually, how the name it has come to the Rowlatt Act? The Justice Rowlatt, he was, his name, Justice Rowlatt, was the main responsible person to make this act. So this act, name was given, that's a Rowlatt Act. So that's embodied with the success of early Satyagraha. Gandhiji in the 1919 decided to launch nationwide Satyagraha. Now, you know, already there's a Mahatma Gandhiji succeeded in the Satyagraha of Champaran, Satyagraha of Kheda, Satyagraha of Ahmedabad. In all these areas, he got success. And then now Mahatma Gandhiji wanted to have a nationwide Satyagraha throughout India. All the people should take part. So that's a nationwide Satyagraha purpose. So he decided to have it. And then it was, and now the Satyagraha, it's a Rowlatt Satyagraha. Now opposing against this are taking, now in this Satyagraha, Mahatma Gandhi is going to force with all the Indian peoples to force to the government, British government, colonial government to take back this Rowlatt Act. So that's against proposed Rowlatt Act of 1919. This act had hurriedly passed through the Imperial Legislative Council in Haribari. Imperial Legislative Council, which was passed this act, this Rowlatt Act. This Rowlatt Act became more oppressive, and it's going to be harsh for these peoples of India who are doing the movement, uprising, strike and all this one. So for curbing the nationalist movement, curb the nationalist movement of India only. It was the main intention to implement this Rowlatt Act, my dear friends. And despite the united opposition of Indian members, there was a lot of opposition of Indian members. In spite of opposition of Indian members, this act was passed. And what was the provisions of Rowlatt Act? There are the two important provisions were there. The provisions of Rowlatt Act. The first provision was, Act gave the government enormous power to repress the political activities. Whatever political activities, associations, activities, anti-movements of British, and all this has to be suppressed. Enormous power, repress the political activities. It was the first provision. And the second provision was that allowed to detention means keep, allowed to detention of political prisoners without trial for 2 years in prison. Any leader they found, political leader they found, they can arrest British, can arrest him and they can keep him in the prison for 2 years without any trial or inquiry for 2 years. So this was the most oppressive and terror act to the freedom movement of India, and Gandhiji decided to have a great nationwide satyagraha. That's a Rowlatt Act satyagraha. This decided, and so Gandhiji wanted to start the nationwide movement against this act. It was unjust law, and then Gandhiji started Hartal in 6th April against it. So this was the